Hello, and welcome back to Spiritual Mystics Podcast. It's Erica. Thanks for being here. Welcome back. How is everybody doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Not a whole lot to report, but we are getting towards the end of March. And with that, it's only fitting that we talk about the spring equinox. The spring equinox, as I'm sure many of you know, is coming up on March 20th, I believe, this year. And the spring equinox is when astronomically the sun crosses the Earth's equator and day and night are equal in length everywhere on Earth. So at this point, days become longer than nights and light continues to increase, which is yay, so exciting. This started in around Imbolc, and now we're heading into that even more. And we've talked about spring equinox before and kind of like how people around the world tend to celebrate the spring equinox and spring in general. But this time I kind of wanted to talk about how to celebrate, what the spring equinox is, how to celebrate, and then also talking about Ostara, which I don't think I've talked about before. This was an interesting little uh, deep dive. I tried to find out information about kind of the beginnings of Ostara and the goddesses associated with, and it was kind of confusing at times, but let's just get into it. So Ostara is the name often used, especially in modern pagan and earth-based traditions, for the spring equinox. And it's one of the 8 points of the wheel of the year, which is a seasonal cycle marking shifts in light, energy in the natural world. So on this wheel of the year, we've talked about before, is like Imbolc and the winter solstice and Samhain and many of these other things, which I want to kind of get into the wheel of the year a little bit more in a different episode. But anyway, at its core, Ostara represents balance in like equal day and night, renewal, life returning after winter, fertility and growth, the beginning of the growing season. And it's essentially the energetic threshold between winter and spring. So I was thinking about this earlier today and I was like, you know what? I like spring's not necessarily like the season that I get most excited about, because I don't know if it's like because in New England, it tends to kind of go from winter, icky, rainy season to summer. At least that's how it has been the last several years. And so I just kind of can't get into spring as much as like, summer or fall. But I was thinking about it today, and the spring equinox is one of the most powerful times of the year. And if you think about it, most amount of energy is coming out around this time of year. You've got the increasing of the light, the snow is melting, so the rivers and streams are running faster and harder. You've got the rain, which can be torrential at times, and you've got the return of the animals and all the energy that's associated with that. And then you have like the eruption of, or at least the beginnings of the eruption of seeds and trees and all this other stuff. So it's pretty powerful energy. It's probably one of the most kind of kinetic energy times of the year you could think of. But so anyway, what do you guys think? I mean, I don't know. Guess I hadn't really thought about it that way. I mean, I always thought like, oh, it's really pretty and like, yeah, it's time of rebirth. But if you think about it, it's pretty powerful. So let's talk about the goddess Ostara. And the goddess is associated with this time is often called Ostara or Aostra. I looked this up and I honestly can't remember now. I'm terrible with pronunciations. But I think it's Aostra. And she's actually not the most well documented ancient goddess. And that's why I was having difficulty. Part of it was that she was Anglo-Saxon, and part of it I saw is Germanic. And I kept kind of like bouncing back and forth. But most of what we know comes from the 8th century monk named Bede, who wrote about a spring festival dedicated to a goddess called Aostra. That basically is the main historical reference. We also hear about it in one of the Brothers Grimm, who talks about it, I think in the 1800s. He also talks about it. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of historical reference. And it was believed that it was, I think she was Anglo-Saxon, but originated from the Germanic tribes. It was kind of confusing. Like I said, it went back and forth. But even with this limited historical records, this goddess is known to symbolize dawn, the returning of light, fertility with new life, reproduction and growth, renewal, which is cycles beginning again, spring, the awakening of the earth. She's often understood as a goddess of emergence, not full bloom like you would see like all the flowers blooming in like May or summer, but it's a moment when life begins, and a little bit more than like Imbolc is, where that's just kind of like the very inkling at the very beginning of of life starting to stir again. So the symbols connected with Eostar carried over to modern culture. So eggs, which represent new life and potential, rabbits, fertility and rapid reproduction, and spring flowers representing early growth. Supposedly there's a myth, it's a more modern folkloric type thing, that Ostara transformed a bird into a hare, and that hare was then still able to lay eggs. And it's kind of like the modern birth of the Easter bunny and eggs, and why that's associated with Easter. But I couldn't find that there was like an actual, like this myth that really kind of happened. And some of these other myths and cultures you could find out, they celebrated this for like, the Druids or the Celtic people, but I couldn't really find that this was actually a true myth. But anyway, so the goddess has somewhat limited history, but the celebration of the spring equinox itself is ancient and global. Many cultures recognize this time as the return of life after winter, the beginning of planting season, and it's actually in many cultures the new year is based around this time because of the change in nature. And examples of this include ancient agricultural festivals across Europe, Persian Nowruz, which is still celebrated today, and various fertility and spring rites are tied to the land and the spring equinox. So even if the name Ostara is specific, the energy and meaning are universal to this time of year. The equinox is an astronomical event, equal light and dark, but Ostara is the spiritual seasonal celebration of that moment. And then the goddess Ostara or Aostra is a symbolic or mythic embodiment of spring's return. And kind of the deeper thread we're running through all of it is balance shifting into growth, potential starting to becoming reality, and life reemerging after stillness. So before we started, decided to pull some cards, and I pulled from my Feminine Wisdom Oracle deck, and I would just ask simply, I'm going to be talking about spring equinox. What do we need to know? And the first card that popped up was direction, and underneath says movement towards desires and guidance. This is a really apropos card because spring is all about kind of that looking forward and wanting to plant seeds in order to have them come to fruition later in time. And it's actually, I can show you if you could see on YouTube and some other things, but this is a beautiful card. It says this woman walking down a path that on each side has these beautiful flowers on each side of her, and she's walking towards the mountains and with this beautiful blue sky. And to me, this is just like has a lot of hope. And I think this, again, I keep talking about Imbolc because they're kind of connected in my mind as far as like the representation, but Imbolc is kind of like that very beginning, that inkling. And then this is more time to go. Like, let's go. Things are happening, things are going to happen, but it's kind of up to us to follow this path down this journey to get things going. Yeah, I really like this card. I think it really has a lot of meaning. And then the next one that I pulled was Harmony. And again, it's this beautiful woman sitting in a field of looks like tulips and lavender, which this time of year, tulips and lavender are often associated with the spring equinox. And then yellows and purples, those type of colors are associated with this time of year as well. And so when I look at this card, again, I'll show you the picture if you can see it. I'll post them on my Instagram as well. But it's this harmony, and to me that is really speaking again to this time of year is, and in general, but like trying to be in harmony with the land. Can Some people are starting to plant things. I mean, I'd love to be able to do that, but again, in New England, we're not really quite there. You can do it inside, but it's but again, there's so that's like knowing when to start planting and being in harmony and listening to what's going on around you and when to plant and what to plant, right? So, and just being in harmony with those around you. So I just love these cards. I think they really, really spoke to what this season embodies. So what are some things that we can do to celebrate this? And I was having kind of trouble connecting a little bit to the things that I was seeing as far as what you can do during this time of year. It was all very like Eastery based to me. But I think that's just coming from my Christian background, which is fine. But everything was like very pastel, and I'm not a pastel person. But it's it's a time for renewal. So what does that mean? What does that mean to you? For me, I got the sudden inkling like last weekend. It was a little early, but we're going by what's on the modern calendars, right, as to how we celebrate these things. I mean, I know spring equinox is an actual astrological thing, but it's still the time, it's the season. And I decided I needed to do some spring cleaning. So I had some decorations up, a table scape that was based off of like the February and the winter seasons and like that sort of thing. So I put a new spring tablescape up, which is beautiful. So I put some pictures up. It was a lot of fun. And then I redid my seasonal altar, and and I just kind of like deep cleaned the house because I just really felt that pull to start to rejuvenate after the winter months. And some things that are associated, like I said earlier, are eggs, the hair, tulips, and irises, like those spring bulb type flowers are associated with this time of year. And then purples and yellows are also this time of year. So those are some ways that you can bring them out. So hearing all of this, what do you guys think that you would want to do in order to really kind of embrace this time of year? Let me know. Let me know what you put on your altar. If you pull some cards, let me know what you get out of those cards. But it's really time to shake off winter and really look into the light and look towards the light and tap into that power that spring holds, and really kind of sit with that for a moment and see if you feel the same way. Do you feel the same way as far as like the power of it, or is it more subtle for you? Um, it may be. I mean, there's no right or wrong on this, right? But for me today, that was just what was really coming through was that power, was the power of that changing of the seasons and the growth and the anticipation for what's coming for the rest of the year. So Hope you got some information. Hope you got some inspiration. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, stay curious and stay connected.